Recording in progress.
So I did one of these talks the last time that I went to India, which was just earlier this year, and it was just kind of a way for me to, yeah, let people know, what I've been up to. Honestly, what I found is like a lot of people asked me about the trip, and they really wanted to know, like, what's the most meaningful thing? What was your favorite part of the trip? And so eventually I just started saying, "Hey, come to this talk. If you're interested, or I can send you the recording of the talk." Um, because trips like this, they're interesting. They're more than just kind of like vacations or trips. Tends to be have a more of a feel of a pilgrimage. There's a very spiritual element to it. Anyone who's ever traveled in India before, you feel that kind of vibration when you're there, and it's definitely something for me that, yeah, I've been experiencing. Like, and it seems like you go deeper every time. I've only been 3 times, and only two of those trips were very much more spiritual in nature. But I definitely said or feel it's gone a bit deeper for me each time. Um, the songs part, I guess, comes from, because this is called stories and songs. That comes from the last time I was there. I was actually with Jody, and we were doing a kirtan academy at the Govardhan Eco Village. And so there was actually a big part of the program was me learning songs and learning how to not, you could say perform the songs, but when they're kind of more in this like spiritual bucket, the performance turns into more of like an offering, really, an offering from your heart. And that became a chance for me to, I guess, showcase a little bit of what I'd worked on there. And it's interesting too when you do something like this. You start to work things into articulation, which is not always like very straightforward. Like I feel like there's actually quite a lot about the trip that I took, just recently that's still very inarticulate. So I apologize for any inarticulations that you have to endure from watching this. But maybe just by doing this, it'll cement a little bit more. It'll concretize a little more firmly. Um, so yeah, that being said, I guess we can just dive in and see what happens. Of course, I've got my dog here who wants to sit on my lap. It's probably because I'm just here talking. He thinks I'm talking to somebody. He doesn't know it's just a computer. Hi, Mac. It's not going to work out though when I'm with the harmonium. I can say hi to Mac. Okay, give me a few minutes. So I'm gonna get my screen shared. Spoiler alert. Okay, yeah. So like I said, welcome to this talk. It's called Stories and Songs from India, Part 2. Part 1 was back in January, as I mentioned, after I came back from the Govardhan Eco Village. And it was actually while I was out on the Dandavat path, which I'll like, break that down and explain to you in a moment. While I was on the Dandavat path, I got the idea that was like, oh my God, I should do another stories and songs when I get back from the trip. And I just emailed my assistant to schedule it for like the week after I get back. And kind of now I'm like wondering, oh my gosh, it's too soon. I'm like, I haven't even processed half of what went down. I realized when I did the one earlier this year, the trip was in January and I didn't do the talk until like mid-March, which I thought was interesting. But like I figured, or like I said, I figured what the heck. This is casual, it's among friends, it's just a chance for me to kind of like I wanted it to be as easy as like, hey, let's just look at the photos that I took on my trip. So I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself here. That being said, we're going to start with a little bit of an invocation. I'm going to chant this. You're welcome to chant along. I've got the words up on the screen as well as the translations. So we can all together just take a deep breath and pause for a moment before we go any further. Let out a big exhale. And for me, it feels really important to start with this mantra, this prayer, because it's a prayer of gratitude. Gratitude to the teachers and the people that kind of paved the path, that even allowed me to do something like this, to take pilgrimage, to go on this trip. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Karya Maham Darati Svaparantika Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavade Paschatya Desha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Going to sing a little bit more, a couple more times with this very sweet mantra. Feel free to sing along, feel free to just listen to the transcendental sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan, Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan. So I know sometimes the sound on Zoom can be a little finicky. Hopefully something came through. If not, maybe sat for a couple minutes in silence. And I just want to say thank you, because it's so hard sometimes to just pause and take that space. But actually, as I was singing, we were singing together, hearing that together, I was reflecting that actually this is the most important thing. The mantra, the sound vibration is arguably more important than anything else that I'll say for the whole rest of the presentation. So even if it was just having the presentation up on the screen, I'm always a little neurotic about the sound. Did it come through okay, Michael?
Yeah, it sounded
really good. Awesome. So anybody watching this who doesn't know me, again, my name is Patrick. Super passionate about connecting people to their potential, their development on a mind, body, and spiritual level. Maybe this is even what's kind of driven me even deeper into my own spiritual inquiry, is having had the opportunity to do coaching and mentorship with people who are also on that path. So in terms of the yoga tradition, it's not just asana, but also bhakti yoga, which is a huge part of what we're going to be talking about in the presentation tonight. The bhakti yoga as the yoga of love, the yoga of devotion. I've run a couple of online communities, Journey to You, online transformational habit coaching community, Journey to the Peak, online yoga membership that I have. As you can see, those are listed there. And then this latest offer that I'm developing, kind of very near and dear to my heart, is going to be one specifically for performing artists who struggle with stage fright, who struggle with remembering their lines or thinking that they're good enough, or dealing with fear of rejection, which happens so much in that industry. So this is, it's kind of on the coals. I haven't fully launched it yet, but to me it feels like a really nice synthesis of everything that's happened up to this point in my life. Not only my career, 10 or 15 years as a professional, musical theater actor, but then also this pivot that I made during the pandemic more into the coaching, wellness, and fitness space. If you go to my website, yogawithpatrick.com, you'll also find a whole bunch of free talks and workshops and webinars that I do, from everything to, cold shower therapy, cryotherapy, the negativity bias, self-care practices, best sleep practices, the 101 science of habits and how habits work. So even if there's, someone that who could use help with any of these things, I've created these videos to be a resource for anyone who would like that. You can also find me teaching yoga locally. Here's just a couple of pictures from my performing days. Which is interesting because I think it's like, a lot of the pictures that you'll see in the presentation tonight is kind of like representative of the life path that I'm on now. So there's a couple of these slides that I included that were also in the first presentation. Here's one of my teachers who actually kind of hooked me and got me into this whole bhakti yoga path. This is Raghunath, and here he's got this, the mantra that he's constantly saying, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm something divine. And it was from hearing him say that in a yoga class like 10 plus years ago that kind of planted this seed for the journey to self-inquiry, to understand a little more deeply some truths in this world and some truths about who I am, the true nature of my identity. If I'm not the mind, if I'm not the body, I'm something divine. What does that mean? And the bhakti yoga path or practice is a great means for, I guess, just like developing a context to understand the nature of that divinity. I included one of my mentors, Kate, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, because he was there at the Eco Village in January. And for you, if you're watching this, maybe you're actually curious too, or you're already interested or engaged in spiritual life. Maybe you're looking for support, whether that's looking to offer, looking to receive. So I appreciate you being here. Maybe you're just here because you're my friend or family, and that also means a lot to me. I'm gonna skip over this perennial philosophy. That's again in the first video, so you can always go back and watch that if you want to. Okay, so I'm gonna dive in to talk a little bit about how I spent my time while I was in India, and we started in a holy city called Mayapur. Mayapur, I flew into Calcutta, which you see just slightly below the red pin here, and I had to take a 4-hour cab ride, and I got in at like 2 in the morning to Calcutta, and that meant my cab ride was between the hours of like 2 and 7 a.m. It's just like quite the entry into India, a country really where it's like I've always found this, and it's like super super abrasive on the senses. Kind of like stuff is just like rushing into your senses, and it's different than the culture that you're probably used to or that I was used to. A lot more poverty. It's kind of polluted. There's smog. It's just very very intense. It's like there's a rawness to everything that comes through, and that goes for both that which is beautiful there. There's the rawness and the beauty, but also in the kind of the harshness and the ugliness, the things that we might tend to have more of an aversion to. So that's why I think it's like anybody who goes to India ends up having some sort of spiritual undertones to the trip. It's probably very rarely just like a straight up vacation. That's my speculation. So it was in Mayapur that I actually got to take my very first bath in the Ganges, the Ganga River, and it was super cool. This was our little group that we were traveling with. So Narayani, Kylie, Cindy, and then Steven was outside. He was taking the picture. And Kastuba and Taradas both just happened to be in Mayapur, and they're two friends and teachers that it was just like such a cool blessing to have them there and to have someone sort of bring you in. I think like that's been a big theme for me that I'll highlight throughout the course of this talk tonight is like the point of entry into places like this is it's important. It's like, and I think it's both spontaneous as well as intentional. Like you want to be intentional with the way in which you enter. So whatever almost purification practices or the state of your mind that you want to enter in, there's something to be said for like there being an intentionality behind it and almost taking, yeah, like planning it out, if you will. But then there's also so many things that happen that can't be planned. These like spontaneous little doors that get opened, and Kastuba and Tara being there to kind of bring us in was definitely one of those doors for me, at least. Because I think it's like Dandavat Swami kept talking about this when I was with him in Govardhan. It's like if you don't have someone to bring you in like that, you just look at the landscape of some of these very holy cities and you're like, what's the big deal? like I don't see anything that fantastic. It's actually kind of like maybe bland or even ugly almost. But really, there's a very like it's such a supercharged spiritual atmosphere in India that once you get below, that which some of the senses may have an aversion to, you start to tap into this like very rich, also very raw sense of spiritual energy. And I'm very grateful to the friends, the teachers, the people that were there that kind of helped me to enter in the right mood and with a little bit more depth, if you will. Mayapur is the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is said to be Radha Krishna incarnate, and also the one who basically founded this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra movement, the movement that got to the propagation of this holy name. The chanting of the holy name is said to be the Yuga Dharma of this age. It's said to be the means with which we can get deliverance. Whereas in previous ages, that Yuga Dharma would have been maybe sitting for hours in some sort of austere meditation. It would have been doing different kinds of penance and sometimes very intense like practices. And it's interesting, like in the age of Kali, the Kali Yuga, it's said to be the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, which I think you don't need to look very far today to see that exemplified in our world. That there's just constant quarrel and hypocrisy and destruction going on. It's so beautiful that there's a big mood of mercy, not only in Bhakti Yoga but in Mayapur in particular. And so I guess the mercy piece is that like we're in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy where it's like the collective environment is already quite intense. And instead of us having to do something like to sit for some odd hours a day or a week or a month in meditation, the Yuga Dharma, the vehicle for us getting that transcendence, that connection, is mantra. It's actually just like it's singing. It's chanting. And to me, that just feels like so much mercy. And maybe it's because I'm a, former musical theater performer, so I just really like singing. So this is too good to be true. That actually that is the vehicle with which I get to connect. So Mayapur is just like a total, the word Dham, Dhan. It's like a holy center, spiritual home, but also very ripe with this whole feeling of kirtan, singing. I was just it was ecstatic, completely ecstatic. It's very hard to describe. So what they have here, they're actually building this amazing, dome-like planetarium temple that is still under construction. But I mean, this every single time I saw this, my breath was just absolutely taken away. And I thought it was really sweet. Like this smaller structure went up, this smaller dome went up, but even that would have been a huge deal for something like this to just pop up in the middle of West Bengal is is so fantastic, and you really feel that when you look at it. But it was sweet. Kastuba and Tara were saying to us like the way that you guys are all looking at this over here, that's the way that we used to look at the Prabhupada Samadhi. Because it was, oh my God, I can't believe this dome is going up. And then it's like, wow, now look. And it's very, it's powerful because it's a manifestation of a vision that was stated, a long time ago. And that this is actually now kind of unfolding. It's to me, it feels like it's a very exciting time to get a chance to visit a place like this. We got a chance to go inside, take a look around. This is a meal that we were served on the floor at the Tara's apartment, and these two ladies from West Bengal, they were in the kitchen, like just working away, cooking away, and probably one of the best Indian meals I've ever eaten in my life. The Panchatattva deities, totally mind-blowing, extraordinary deities in Mayapur. These are like something like 8 to 10 feet tall each. And then this is the Radha Madhava and the gopis. So yeah, breathtaking. Cameras weren't really allowed in the temple here, but I did sneak two pictures. I couldn't help it. I saw other people sneaking pictures, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna do it, do it too. Some of these were meant to be videos, but I guess they didn't fully load. But you can just get a sense of just like how many people are packed into this temple. So that collective mood of devotion, you just feel it's like carrying you. Really, really potent. So from Mayapur, we probably spent like I think 5 or so days in Mayapur, and that was good. It was hot. I think I made a social media post kind of right when I arrived, where I was like, "What am I even doing here?" Like my friends hadn't gotten in yet. I was going also like without caffeine, which was new, so that could have 70% contributed to the bad mood that I was in. But you land in a place like that, and I think it has to do with what I was speaking about earlier. It's like, okay, what's the point of entry? How are you actually entering? Because there's more than just one way to enter. It's not just the entry on the physical plane, if you will. And once my friends got in, I totally felt way more like connected there. We made it the point every morning to go to the 4:30 a.m. Mangalarti program, which I've never been to a Mangalarti with so many people as in Mayapur. It's like I've actually never spent that much, any time around so many people at 4:30 in the morning, temple or not. But it's like I said, just a totally ecstatic mood. I can't wait to go back. So from Mayapur, we went on to Govardhan, which we flew first to New Delhi, and then took about a 3-hour car ride to Govardhan. Oops, I guess this is a few more pictures of us in Mayapur actually. There's some elephants that stay near the campus, and they take them out for a walk every once in a while. And so one day, while we were walking, I think we were going to the Ganges. Oh no, this day we were going to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house, and one of the elephants just came out on the path ahead of us, and it was pretty fantastic. I included a picture of a banyan tree here because it's a fascinating tree when you think about this. These roots that just like grow downward. Here is us having a little kirtan at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's house. What this is a little temporary temple that they'll pop up during festivals. So this one in particular was to Durga. You can see they have the deities in there. But yeah, just on the other side, you can see it's just like fabric, and right on the other side, kind of scaffolding. And they're everywhere. You'll see them like on almost on every block. This was really fascinating. This is still in Mayapur. We thought we were going to find the shop of this guy who makes jewelry with tulsi beads, and he has a shop that's called Silver Tulsi Mala. He has a location in Vrindavan, but he also lives in Mayapur. And somehow or other, we like got the address of their apartment instead, and we went there, and they weren't home, and we called the guy, and he's like, "Well, just come to the stable. We've just had a little colt, a baby horse. Come to the stable, and we'll." So basically, he creates this little like mini pop up for us with some of the stuff he had here from his shop. Really, really beautiful pieces. Mostly, I think, all with Tulsi, and then some sort of silver component too. So I got that one right here. And then I got Krishna Kumari, my friend who has been taking care of the community cow here in Chatham, spearheading that whole thing. I think it's this one right there. It's a little cow. Brought that back for her. One of the other cool things is that Kastuba let us come in live for the streaming of the Wisdom of the Sages podcast that they do every single day. So we were sitting in the background for that. Here's just a little corner on the campus, the ISKCON campus. Place to get snacks. There wasn't like too much nutritionally, how do you say, no, nutrient dense food. I found in Mayapur. Maybe you had to go off campus to get it. But the thing about the food is it's all offered. It's all prasad. So it's all been kind of prayed over. So there's this, again, spiritually charged vibration, even to the food that you're eating there. Okay, it's totally not uncommon to see like rickshaws just packed to the brim with full families. The funny thing was, as we drove around this to the right of it, I kept looking, but I turned off my camera. That there was like I want to say another like I don't know 8 to 10 people packed in the front of this thing. Um, So, this is India. It's Jai Jagannath who led us on the retreat once we got to Govardhan, the Dandavat parikrama, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Um, he was explaining to me this, idea he has that India is actually, what is it? Is it home of the land of the free, home of the brave, home of the free, land of the brave? um, that's India actually embodies that in this different kind of way because of the type of freedom that you see here. The freedom to do something like this, which is like another way of thinking about freedom, if you will. So for me, it was kind of interesting going from Japan to India because I incidentally just happened to be traveling in Japan before I got to India. Japan is order. Everywhere you look is kind of like it's almost calculated in a way. It's so efficient, it's so orderly. And then India is like a polar opposite. It's chaos. And so one of the things Jaya was also saying is that like when you go to the polar end of chaos, you get freedom. When you go to the polar end of order, you get oppression. So India is like it's a type of freedom, if you will, and it's exemplified in things even like this, packing as many people as you can, standing on the many cows just like right there in the middle of the highway. I'm also looking at all this with like eyes of novelty. It's totally new to me. By the time you spend a couple of weeks there, it's just like okay, yeah, no big deal. All right, so the Dandavat Parikram was the rite of passage, if you will. It was the I don't know what to call the activity that I was really there for this trip around. It's what I had signed up to do. We went to Mayapur ahead of time, and then this next portion was actually a retreat that was organized by Jai Jagannath and a couple of his friends. And it's interesting. Like I don't even really know what fully compelled me to do this because it's an austere thing. It's almost kind of an extreme thing, and I'll explain what it is for those of you who don't know in just a second. But I think it has to do with my attraction to bhakti yoga, and my attraction to this path, and that almost now it's almost like I'll just whatever opportunity, if I feel like I have a response to it when it's put on my doorstep or the invitation is made, it feels important for me to be there. Whether that's just kind of like making it out to Super Soul Farm for an evening program or going to a kirtan somewhere. Because actually, I end up getting so much reciprocation for it. And that's something that's said even about the Dandavat Parikrama is like the amount of reciprocation that you get for doing something like this. I tend not to really think about it too much like that because I'm like not trying to be too attached to whatever benefits I might get from doing something like this. But I also want to trust that like yeah, they're going to come and they're going to flow, and I have to be open to receiving them. This will tie in a little bit to one more of the songs that I'm going to sing for you guys tonight that you're welcome to sing with me. So I want to put these up here these were like, pairs of opposites that I found were coming up for me as themes while I was on the path of the Dandavat Parikram. And I'm not going to break each of them down right now, but at least they're up here. And then if we see a photo later on where it comes up for me, I'll refer back to it. And maybe you'll infer your own, observations just from me having presence to this here now too. The effort and the surrender, up and down, forward, backward, together, alone, completion, continuation, concrete and dust, and also fast and slow. Also included a couple of Bhagavad Gita verses that I feel like are this is sort of where I'm gleaning realization from. Based on my experience through these verses, are really where I'm kind of my biggest takeaways for, I guess you would say, realization. This one's Bhagavad Gita 2.6, also 2.40, and 2.47 and 48. And again, I'm just going to presence them here. I'm not going to go into them, but if something comes up in a photo that I see later on, I might flip back to it and share as to why. except for this one. I'm going to talk about this one. I've been trying to memorize this one. Karpanya dosho pahatas vabhava prichami tvam dharma samudacheta yatreya shannischitam bruhitane shishasteham saritmam tvam prapanam. This happens in the very beginning of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's actually like it's the juncture in a way at which Krishna then starts to reveal this transcendental wisdom and instruction to Arjuna. And so this is Arjuna speaking here. He's like, now I'm confused about my duty and I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. And I think it's like there's a few reasons this verse kept coming through for me, and one is because it's the second verse of the shlokas recommended for memorization booklet that I picked up in Mayapur. And because shloka memorization is just something that people do in this path, and I've always found that kind of funny that it's another tie to my world as an actor. That when I was an actor, I was constantly having to memorize things and learn combinations, and now I get to take those skills and bring them here. And so, because then when you have the verses in your mind, the shlokas, the sutras, then as you go through your life and you have experience, you see when they resurface, and it's almost like a filter through which to look at your life through. And I mean, this one just strikes such a chord, I think, for a lot of devotees. For me, just personally, right now in my life, the confusion aspect and like the loss of composure and the anxiety, yeah, it feels spot on. And that's actually not such a bad place to be, but rather in that condition, can I turn to God and seek shelter and seek instruction, really? So if I had to even think about how to answer that question of like, well, why did I choose to do something like this? It's just because it was, in some sense, an act of surrender, an act of like, because it's the austerity of it is kind of brutal. I'll get into why in a moment. So it's like, why? Well, it's like, okay, this is my form of surrender, and let's see what kind of instruction comes from a result of having done this. Because this service is it's prescribed in a way, and let's get into exactly what it is. So the name of the thing was called Dandavat Parikram, right? So let's break this down. Parikram is a clockwise circumambulation of sacred entities, coming from Wikipedia here. And the path, we would always refer to the Dandavat as the path. Oh, what happened on the path today? How is the path? And the path along which it is performed as practiced in Indic religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism. So yeah, that part is hopefully clear enough that the parikram itself, krama actually means sequence in Sanskrit. So this is the sequence in a way, the circumambulation, the clockwise circumambulation around the sacred entity. The parikram that we were doing specifically, and I thought this was interesting, they actually even include Govardhan, which is where we were in the Wikipedia article, just showing it's a very holy place to do parikrama around. You could do parikrama around many things. I mean, even if you have a spot that's special for you out in the woods, even in your house, you could do a little parikrama of it, a circumambulation of it. There's a lot of, you could draw a lot of meaning out of what it means to go around something. And we'll see if that gets fleshed out a little bit more tonight as well. So, yeah, I don't think we need to read this whole thing, but basically just showing that Govardhan Giriraj is the name of the mountain itself. And there's this really beautiful pastime that we actually just celebrated celebrated the pastime, if you will, happening earlier this week. And it's been celebrated all over the world. And essentially what happens in the pastime, I'll do a very, very brief kind of synopsis of what happens here. You see Krishna holding up on his pinky this entire mountain, and you also see these dark thunderclouds that are up overhead, and you see an elephant. And so, anyways, what's happening is basically like there was a festival scheduled to honor, one of the demigods named Indra. And Krishna kind of rolls up to his dad and he's like, "Hey dad, what's the big deal with this festival? It's like, do we really need to be, doing worship for this demigod Indra? Wouldn't it be better if we actually just worshiped this hill that provides so much for us? This grass and its cows and the priests that, maintain the hill. This is actually should be the object of our worship." So, making a long story short, they ultimately agree and say, okay, let's go ahead and do the whole puja, the festival for the hill instead of for Lord Indra. Well, this doesn't make Lord Indra happy at all. So what he does is he creates this massive storm. You could just picture basically the worst storm that you've ever been in and times it by 100. And that's the kind of like torrential downpour that starts to come upon Govardhan. So what Krishna does is he just says, "Here, I'll take care of this. I'm going to pick up the hill." And as a demonstration of his strength, he does it with his left arm, his left hand, his non-dominant side. As a demonstration of his strength, he balances it not with his hand, but with his pinky finger. And he shelters everybody in the town underneath the hill for some amount of time that they're all like hanging out down there while the rain is just, pouring down, etc. So that's the pastime told very, very briefly of this hill. And I think it's kind of like later on said that Krishna would instruct people like from now on, do parikrama around this hill, go around this hill as the form of your worship. Just gonna mute there. Okay, you guys can also like stop me at any point if you have questions, comments. Also, don't feel pressured if anyone has to log off. I'll probably go for another like 20, 30 minutes. Like I said, this is being recorded. So yeah, just wanted to make that brief announcement. I'll sing again in just a second, and you'll be invited to sing with me. Okay, so that's the parikram. Now, the last thing I guess to tell you is that, and I think it says it in here, yeah. Govardhan Parikram, the circumambulation is 21 kilometers. So the path around the hill is 21 kilometers. And the sacred ritual is performed by many believers as spiritual purification. There's no time limit for performing this parikram. But for those who perform the Dandavat, full prostration, which is what we did, parikram is it's an arduous form which may take weeks or sometimes even months to complete. So our timeline was 11 days, basically. We had 11 days to do the 21 kilometers, and that broke down roughly into about 2 kilometers a day, about 2 hours a day, and we'd do it in the morning. We would wake up and we'd be on the path by 5:45, 6, and we'd do the Dandavats. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about what that was like. Dandavat Parikram is performed by standing in one spot, offering obeisances like a stick, danda. So that yoga pose, Dandasana, for example. A Dandavat Pranam is when you just fully prostrate, lay your body on the ground, lying flat on the ground and then continuing contagiously, good word, until the root is covered. It is also said that some sadhus, Hindu holy men, perform 108 obeisances in one spot before moving to the next, and this can take months to complete. I have a video of a guy doing that I posted on my Instagram the other day. So that's the Dandavat Parikram. That's basically what we signed ourselves up for. And it was really smartly led, and I really appreciated our facilitator, our leader Jai Jagannath, who held the space and created the framework for us to do this. Because again, like the point of entry with which you're doing these things really matters. The really beautiful quote that we kept coming back to is that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And so we used the template of the hero's journey, with this whole process, which has been thematically coming up for me again and again in the last couple of years, which is really nice. We had some journaling prompts and basically got a lot of time for reflection while we were there. And essentially, like, I guess the important thing to point out here is that something like this is there's an initiatic element to it, if you will. Here's the map broken down of the amount of days that we did around the hill. We started here at a place called Manasi Ganga, and then you can see day one was, a little bit shorter, that he eased us in. Day two was a bit longer, and I think collectively day two was the hardest for everybody because it just starts to set in. It's like, whoa, this is what we're doing. Just laying ourselves down again and again and again. Here is I guess the video didn't load, but the sadhu doing the 108. So you see he'll move these stones 108 from here to here, and then he'll move this whole thing forward one pace, and that will be his Dandavat. It's a huge measure of devotion. Really, really. Check out the reel I posted on Facebook. It looks nice. There was also some, it wasn't as austere as maybe it would be for some sadhus. We would, get we'd frequent the sweet shop to get lassis, a sweet yogurt drink. And there's so much bonding. A lot of like the group definitely became an organism. It became a family, and that was very, very special. Thankfully, this video loaded because here's us doing some Dandavats. So you can see me there at the end. What you do is you put a stone, and maybe you saw Sham and Hemalata. Hemalata used a stick. You would place that, and that's where you would step up to as a measure of one of your Dandavats. And so you can imagine that stone became, quite special for us. Although for me, I kept forgetting to bring mine, so I ended up with like 4 stones. Helped me with non-attachment, I guess. But if you go back to the Wikipedia article, actually, there's different things that you could go around. It suggests what you would go around with. Do it with, a clay pot filled with milk. You might do it with, smoke from incense. So what we ended up doing was just going around with a rock, most of us. I think Jai used a coconut shell for a little while. But I guess I just like want to, before going on, like, I think, like I said, on day two, we really started to get a sense of like what was going to be asked of our bodies to do something like this. I consider myself to be, decently in shape, and it's kind of like it didn't matter. However much working out, however much I could bench press, however physically fit I was, this was a different kind of strength. And this is something that Jai said on the second or third day, is we're doing this by a strength greater than our own. So it's like I was getting some sort of assistance to even be able to do something like this, granted a permission to even enter this holy place. And so back to this theme of surrender, sometimes it's really about just like, letting go of what the egoic mind would prefer to do, and following through with the vow or the commitment that was the Dandavat parikrama. Because, like I said, there were moments of it that just kind of suck. Your body's hurting. It feels rote. It feels repetitive. Here we were in the dust, but there's other parts of the path where you're like more right on the concrete. That's one on the concrete. There's cars going by you, there's cows going by you, there's cow dung, just to the left and to the right of you. People are spitting. So coming back to this thing of like India being very abrasive on the senses, all of that's still right there as well. It was in this, I included this slide in the first talk that I gave, but this idea of purification, and that purification isn't pretty, not always at least. And I guess I'm just that's coming back through with the Dandavats. Getting extremely dusty. So maybe this is a good place to return to the concrete dust pair of opposites. So the dust in Vrindavan is actually said to be something very, very holy. I pulled up a quick story here. Did I get that? Yeah. No, it's Govardhan has to come. Let me see if I can grab it really quick. But it tells the importance of the dust of Raj, the dust of Govardhan of Vrindavan, and why it feels a little like, well, why would I typically don't like dust. I'm typically trying to remove dust from, the surfaces of my house, or it's got this like more negative connotation to it, if you will. But this is definitely flips that on its head. So here, this short story about the importance of Braj, the land of Vrindavan, the dust of Braj. Once Sri Jagannath Das, a 17th century saint, was in Vrindavan. One day he was very hungry. He saw a sweeper sweeping the floor, and he asked him, "I'm very hungry. Can you please give me your roti, your bread?" And the sweeper replied, "O sage, why do you ridicule me? I am a low caste sweeper. Why would you eat my roti?" And the sage said, "Come on, a sweeper of Vrindavan is superior to any Brahmin." The sweeper could not disobey, so he gave his roti to the sage, who ate it. However, when this event spread in Vrindavan, all the Brahmins, the priests, complained that the sage did an impure action. His act was defying the historic rules of society. To this, the sage replied, "I understand your complaint. You are all learned people, but don't you know the importance of the Vrindavan Raj, of the dust of Vrindavan? It is so surcharged with Radha Krishna prema, so with the love of the divine couple, that even Lord Brahma desires to become a particle of Vrindavan. Therefore, isn't a Vrindavan sweeper who is constantly serving the dust? The sweeper is the one who serves the dust, breathing it, rolling in it, and bathing in it. Isn't it more pure than anyone else?" This silenced everyone. Strange are the ways of saints, but through this story we are taught that we should always realize the importance of Vrindavan Raj. All glories to Vrindavan. Jai. So as you can see, we are getting quite dusty here on the path. I thought it'd be kind of fun to include this poem too by Marilyn Nelson. I heard this on the podcast On Being some years ago. Another alternative perspective on dust, if you will. Dusting. Thank you for these tiny particles of ocean salt, pearl necklace viruses, winged protozoans, for the infinite intricate shapes of sub-microscopic living things, for algae spores and fungus spores bonded by vital mutual genetic cooperation, spreading their inseparable lives from equator to pole. My hand, my arm make sweeping circles. Dust climbs the ladder of light for this infernal, endless chore, for these eternal seeds of rain. Thank you for dust. This last stanza is like actually very applicable to the Dandavats, with the circles, the ladder of light, and then this for this infernal, endless chore. This came up in the Dandavats for us because we would do these beautiful sharing circles every night. And I remember one of the girls shared on the Dandavat parikrama feeling like the myth of Sisyphus, the endless trudge of the boulder up the hill just to have it rolled down and go back and do it again. It's like, oh my gosh, we're just doing these prostrations again, one after the next, after the next, after the next. And yeah, you end up actually finding a very deep meaning in it. And there's a meditative quality to it as well. And that doesn't mean it wasn't always kind of rote. Like sometimes, yeah, I was chanting the Maha Mantra with every Dandavat, touching my head down to the earth, getting the dust on my forehead. And I would chant, I would think of God's names, I would think of God's pastimes. But then there was other times when I was thinking like, okay, eccentric contraction of my triceps. Okay, step forward with the right foot, step forward with the left foot, step forward with the right foot, step forward with the left foot. So there had to be, yeah, just different ways, I guess, of continuing forward on the path. I thought it was interesting, like the parts of the path that were dust versus the concrete, because the dust is obvious, actually like the more sacred thing. If we take anything away from that story and the poem, the dust is the more sacred thing. The concrete is also the more manufactured, if you will, thing. It's harder. That didn't mean though it wasn't easier for us to actually push up. You could think of like the difference between taking a jog on the beach versus, having a harder, more firm surface. So I was just interested and intrigued by this pair of opposites, the concrete and the dust. What I found is when I was placing my forehead down, because that was a little mini vow I made to myself to like the Dandavat doesn't count unless my forehead is like on the ground. So when we were on the dust, I found that the dust would come onto me. But when we were on the concrete, I found that I would leave a mark on the concrete, a mark of my sweat, generally. And it would be just a little forehead print of sweat onto the concrete to sort of stamp in my Dandavat there. We did tend to end our Dandavats for the day with the chaiwala, so just stopped at the closest chai stand. Here's Jai. It's kind of a funny picture. He led our retreat. And yeah, you'll see chai wallas with their little stoves, and all the chai is made right there to order. They'll serve it to you either in a little cup like this or a small clay cup that you actually just can throw on the ground and break so that it will dissolve back into the dust. I was just so infatuated with all the even little street art that you see through Govardhan, through Vrindavan. What I really found is like that place and the locals, the whole environment is just dripping with devotion. The way that people walk around, even just greeting one another, saying hello or goodbye, they're saying things like Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Hare Krishna. It got me thinking at a certain point, I'm like, what would it be like if you're walking around America and people were just being like, Jesus Christ, Mother Mary, as the first or second words out of their mouth? It would be kind of strange. You look at people being like, what did you say? But here is just this total normal thing that everyone is walking around with God's name on their lips, God's name on their mind, God in their hearts. And you really feel that like supercharged in the environment. This is one of the holy bathing places, Radha Kund, Dandavats and dust. Every morning we would sing a prayer. We would sing 3 songs before we would start our Dandavats for the day. And so that's actually going to be the next thing, the next song that I sing. And then I think there's only a few more slides after that. So you're more than welcome to sing this song with me if you know it. You're also welcome to just take a look at the translation. I'm not going to read the translations, but while I'm singing the Sanskrit here, you could check those out. So this song was composed by Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur, one of the acharyas or great sages in the Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya. So Gaudiya Vaishnav Sampradaya, like colloquially, that would just be the Hare Krishnas, if you will. But the Sampradaya, the lineage that this tradition is called the Gaudiya Vaishnav. So I'll sing the Govardhan Astakam. This is a prayer to the hill Govardhan. Krishna prasadena samasta shaila samrajamapnoti cha vairinopi sakrasyaya prapabalim sasakshad Govardhano medishatam abhistam svaprestahastam bhujaso kurmaya Sukanubhuterati bhumivrite Mahendra Vajamatinaphyanat ajanam Govardhano medishatam abhistam Yatraiva Krishno Vrishabhanuputra Danam gritum kalaham Danam grihitum kalaham vitine Shrute sprihayatra mahatyata shri Govardhano medishatam abhistam Snatva sarasva susamira hasti Yatraiva nipadi paragaduli Alolayan kelati charusashri Govardhano medishatam abhistam Kasturika sahitam kimachre Uham prabhusvasyamuhur vitanvan Naisargika sviyashila sugandhar Govardhano medishatam abhistam Vamsha pratidvan anusaravartma Driksha vayatra harim hariyaha Yantyo labante nahi vishmatasa Govardhano me dishatam abhistam Yatraiva gangan anuna viradham Aro yamadye tunimang yanaka Krishna hiradha nugalo babosa Govardhano me dishatam abhistam Vina bhavet kim haridasa varya Padashrayam bhaktirata shrayami Yame vasa premani jeshayo shri Govardhano me dishatam abhistam. And oftentimes this last verse is included in these prayers, just basically saying that the reader of these 8 verses that are glorifying Lord Hari's greatest servant, may the heart melting with pure love quickly attain direct service to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Madhava. So always looking for service from the feet, or even wanting to touch the feet, is a big theme that you see in Bhakti. And it goes back to the idea of the dust. It's like, well, the feet are closest to that dust. So even the dust, Krishna worships the dust that Radha walks on. It's a very profound concept when you think about that God embodied is willing to put love, really, above even himself. I find that quite profound. So thanks for letting me sing that prayer. It definitely kind of transports me back to Govardhan. We would sing that every single morning before we'd take off on the path. Here is a group of us that kind of got designated as what was called Team A. I'm doing air quotes as I say that. And mainly because of, I think, Cindy here. She's an amazing yoga teacher, super fit person, and she just had a speed on her Dandavats. And for some reason, the 4 of us were the ones that were like, wanted to keep up. And incidentally, they had to leave a few days early, so myself, Hemalata, and Sham we kind of maintained Team A. It was really sweet. These 2 actually gave their rocks to these 2, and they continued around the path with the rock, so the rock could finish the entire circumambulation. You'll find different parts of the hill. They might have a couple like stones from Govardhan set up in more of like a little temple type of setting or altar setting. The locals, what are known as Brij Basis, the people of Braj, they were actually so like enamored and so respectful in a way to see us doing something like this, that they would always be like either cheering us on with a Radhe Sham, Radhe Radhe as they walked by, or like this guy, he just like straight up stopped and was just like giving blessings, telling us, wow, this is so important. Thank you so much. They see Westerners coming here and doing something like this. It's incredibly meaningful to them. Was a video of somebody making a lassi. I ran into a lot of friends, people who weren't even on our trip, but that I know from other festivals or sanghas, and that's kind of I think a theme in Bhakti is like it's a very very small world, and you end up just like dude, it's a lot of cool synchronicities. Okay, so that's the last picture I had on there. I'm gonna jump to my photo album to just show the finish line, because that was another theme, right? Continuation versus completion. This path that we were doing, it was a circle. A circle doesn't really actually have a starting point or an ending point unless you designate one. And granted, we all wanted that designation for these Dandavats because I don't know, and this is kind of one of my realizations as well. Going back to that Bhagavad Gita verse I shared about the I'm confused about my duty, please instruct me. In some ways, when I was there doing the Dandavats, towards the end, I actually got very sad that this was coming to a close. Because even though it was this like huge physical austerity and kind of exhausting and breaking my body down, my knees were hurting, my elbows were hurting, my ribs were starting to hurt. Um, it was a very prescribed activity. It was just kind of like you wake up, you do 2 hours of your Dandavats, your devotional service, and then you're on retreat. You just kind of go back and hang out and do some reading, do some singing, have some conversation. That's your day. That's your life. And so this whole thing of like I'm confused about my dharma, I'm confused about my service. When we're doing the Dandavat parikrama, there actually wasn't that much to be confused about. The service was very clear. And I realized that like, oh my gosh, coming home is going to be much more of a Dandavat parikrama, if you will, like a continuation of this ritual as I find ways to, step into my purpose, step into my service in a devotional way. And I still don't really know that I feel super clear on it. I continue to be a soul surrendered, if you will. Um, but that being said, the completion was very important. And let me see if I can actually. I want to show you guys. I think I'd have to go here. Yeah, so here was basically the last day. Here comes Hamalada. Let's see if I can get that photo pulled up. You guys see in the photo? Okay. There I am in the background, and I was like pretty heavy tears at this point because you're just like, wow, 11 days of this, and we're actually now circling back to the point where we started, and this is going to be done. And there were so many days I was on the path where I'm like, okay, I can do this. It's temporary. It's not going to last forever. And then it's coming to a close, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure I'm ready for it to be over. They were really sweet. They actually had kind of garlands for us that they got really quickly. It was just the thoughtfulness of one of the guys in our group who was doing some photography. He's like, let's get everybody garlands. And so as we finished, Hamalata finished first. I came across second, and it was not a race. I say that it sounds like it's a race, and I had to. If there was any race that was happening on the Dandavat Parikrama, it was a race between my ego and my intelligence, basically. And even to be with Team A, like there were so many days when we were going fast, and I was like, why are we doing this so fast? This is exhausting. And I had to keep like coaching myself, self-talk of like, you can go slow. You can be the last one on the path if you need to be. And then I would started like the mind will do amazing things when you're caught in these positions. It started being like, well, what if I don't finish? What if I got my ribs were hurting quite a bit one day, and I was like, oh my god, what if this takes me out and I don't finish? And it's like that would be such a huge lesson. It would arguably be the better thing to happen for me to have to learn that like, okay, that's okay. But anyways, I did end up finishing. I did come across, and it felt really good to complete the circle, to have gone once fully around. Interestingly, that was my very first parikrama of Govardhan. Many people come to Govardhan, they could do walking parikrama. They may just, spend 4 to 5 hours one day walking around the whole thing, and that's a very special thing to do. Before I ever walked it, for some reason, I did Dandavat parikrama around it. And then the next couple of days, Danadhara Swami was in town. I got to walk half of it each day with him, which was very special. But you can see it's just like big emotional. These two were a couple from Argentina. Big emotional finish. There's Jai coming across. Deva Madhava. We really did get to be quite close with one another. It was fantastic. The mats are all like super dirty by the end. This really, really powerful soul here. Um, it was awesome to have him on the trip with us. and because he's a sannyas, he's a swami, but he really just wanted to be like a participant with one of us, and so that was really sweet. You can also see them singing back here. So we were having kirtan for people. We were singing and chanting while they were coming across. Totally has like finish line vibes. These photos. Padmanabha Swami. This guy has a very interesting story, and he's sort of public about it, which is why I'll share it with you because you can go to his YouTube channel, and it's a little bit. I feel like it's part of his mission and message. He was rejected by his guru about a year ago for kind of coming out with it's more of a refined story that I'm going to be able to say, but and like I said, I'm only sharing it because he's extremely public with it. You can actually see he just shared a video on his YouTube page that was his reflections 1 year after being rejected. And part of I think what he's trying to do is to make this point that like unless we address these imbalances where we see them happening in the world, they're just going to kind of stay there in the shadow. So it's actually important to bring some light to some of the traumas that are done, and being ostracized or something like that is one of those. So a little tangent there about that great soul. There's the clay cups I was talking about. I found satisfaction in like being able to just take it and toss it in the ground and watch it get crushed into pieces. And then we had a nice little photo op where we put all of our stones in a circle on one of the mats, and that was the completion of our Dandavat parikrama. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Thanks for staying through to the end and listening in. Also, anybody who was with the recording. I'm trying to think if there's any loose ends that I left untied. Does anybody have any questions, any comments, anything you want to just say since you're here? Something that you found interesting?
Hey,
Hey,
Patrick.
Patrick.
Hey, Don Cayley.
There's a little bit of
Little bit of
echo.
echo.
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
Do you
Do
hear
you
that?
hear that?
Uh, when you started talking, there's been an echo. So I'll mute myself, and then you can
Okay.
share.
Okay.
Maybe that'll help.
Yeah. Could you hear me now? All right. It sounds a lot better on my end. The echo is just throwing me off. First of all, thank you so much for this incredible presentation, taking us around the hill with you. It's just so enlivening. One of my favorite parts was the Govardhan. Again, beautiful singing, beautiful pastime. So that was super special. Um, and you mentioned this early on in your presentation, but the concept of reciprocation, I just thought was really sweet because a lot of times I drag my feet and I don't always go do this or that, but I realize like I never have any regrets when I do go to the kirtan or the program, or so it's just a nice reminder of reciprocation and how Krishna is always reciprocating with our efforts. But the question that I had for you is obviously like you went through this austerity, right? And you're kind of like on this high vibration right now, and inspired, and you have this wonderful story to tell. Um, how do we keep up that inspiration? Because you're in a really great space right now, and I've always found like I'll get inspired, and it's like I'm going to do this, and I'm going to read tonight, and I'm going to do all the right things, and then it's like I just fall flat. Like, so how, like, do you have any recommendations on how to keep this high vibration going?
Yeah, thank you so much for saying all that. And I mean, for some reason, the way I feel called to start my answer to that question is to say, like, I've been utterly depressed since I got back. And I find that, like, coming back from India, there's this, like, low grade depression that lingers for a little bit. It's almost, I was thinking about this earlier. It feels a little bit like when I left for the trip, I left a shell of myself here. And coming back, it's like I'm trying to squeeze this like new version of myself back into that old shell. And it's like, it doesn't quite work, you know? And even though it wasn't that long while I was gone, but it was this like super deep thing. And so honestly, in our final circle there, I just like cried through my whole share, and I was like, "You guys pray for me because I have no idea what I'm going back to." Like actually, the Dandavats are easy. That was like my takeaway. That I'd rather just come here and do Dandavats for 2 hours a day. Those sadhus that do the Dandavats 108 and then move a pace forward. There's a story that somebody once asked them in a program, what do you do when you're done, when you actually make it around the mountain? And the sadhu just looked back and was like, what do you mean when I'm done? And that's the continuation theme. Is that actually it's just a circle. You just go around again and again. Which is fascinating because the circle in Eastern traditions is also reflected in the circle of suffering, this wheel of samsara that we're all caught in, you know? And that's the samsara we're trying to transcend in some ways. So the Dandavat parikrama is almost like, well, I'll just surrender to the circle. I'll just get down and pay my full obeisances. And at the center of that circle, I'll put God there. I'll put Giriraj there. I'll put something very holy. So again, I kind of went back to like what we do when we're there, but like I came back from this trip with Gauranataya deities. I felt called to like bring, God and form into my home, and I've got on my altar now the four little stones that I took around the hill on the various days because I kept forgetting. So a little mini Mount Govardhan there. The Sangha is just like so important too, like you were saying, Donna Kaylee, is finding ways to stay plugged in, and I totally like it is the saving grace. The sangha, the community, the association. If I didn't have you guys here, who knows how I'd be coming home. The kirtan on Sunday that Jody was at was the first time I saw anybody really getting back. And even that was kind of like, I don't want to go. I knew I had to go because it was Jody and I started that kirtan. But it was also like a necessary resistance to push through. I think even doing something like this, I had so much anxiety about this presentation leading up to it. What am I going to say? Who's going to be there? Am I really qualified to be saying any of these things? There kind of just is like, for me, if I can move through that resistance and not run away from it, it actually ends up being quite productive. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but anything you'd say to that?
No, it was great. Thank you. I would just say again, to me, your presentation was perfect. It's interesting to hear you say that you had anxiety. It was just so captivating and enthralling and so interesting and just so well delivered. The one last point that I wanted to make is you said that when you were doing the parikram, you were just like you knew what your service was and you were engaged in service. So the last thing that I wrote down was like a message to myself, is to find my service. Like I think that just because when I've had like really deep moments in Krishna consciousness, it's like I'm washing the pots in Krishna's kitchen or I'm cleaning the floor, so it's just these moments of fully absorbed service, which have been so rewarding and so blissful. And I what you said to us, it's like you found that there in the Dandavat. It's like that was your service and you were fully engaged, and like there was nothing else but that service. So there's just something to be said about really diving in and knowing what our service is. And yeah, so it's a matter of finding that service.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm right there with you. And if you remember back to the slide that was up when we were chanting the Maha Mantra earlier, one of the ways that that mantra gets interpreted is actually a prayer asking for devotional service. Please just give me your service again and again and again. So it's not uncommon that devotees will actually be like hungry for service. You need a ride from the train station? I'd love to. Let me just serve you in some way. It's a very sweet mood. And I appreciate what you shared, Don Kaylee, because it's helping me to remember that even in my own house, which if I turned if I turned my computer screen around right now, you'd be appalled. Like that is all. I brought Goran and Thai deities home. It's like this is their house. I am cooking for God. I am cleaning for God. I don't know that that paradigm is cemented into my consciousness yet, but it does. I just appreciated what you said about like looking for my service. That I can even make that, you know, the washing the dishes here, the keeping my home space clean, whatever it is. Right now I'm finding it like no, my space is not super clean. I'm not offering all my food, but I'm getting to sit down in front of the deities and chant and just sing. And that feels like such a sweet service because it's and I think that that's something true about Dharma is it also should be aligned with something that feels innately, you and that you enjoy. There's some element of enjoyment, of passion, of putting your own skills and talents into it. So yeah, and I should clean my kitchen. So thank you so much. Anyone else? Anyone else want to share any reflections, questions?
Well, I would
Well,
just
I would
like
just like
to know
know
that
that.
Oh, echo, sorry.
yeah, I would just like to say how beautiful it was, Patrick. It's always just a pure joy to listen to you when you're speaking and presenting and singing. And I've recently been really captivated by the things that you've posted on Facebook. There was one about happiness a couple of weeks ago that was just resonated so strongly. Just really appreciate, yeah, all of your transferable skills from a performer now into a coach and bhakti practitioner. I really really value it and all that you offer. So I think that seems to be your dharma to me. So thank you for this wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to be back in India with you again. That was so sweet to spend that time with you the first time around. Jody and I sat next to each other in Kirtan Academy so we could pass notes and whisper to each other. uh, Michael, Mom, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say it's so beautiful. I love what you said about the shell, like coming home. I remember that with my spiritual teacher. We did expand so much on time away on these journeys and then come back to the place that you've been used to, and you really don't fit in that. But as you were saying it, before I left my home in New Mexico, I found a box of some baby clothes with all four of you boys. And so as I'm listening to you every single time, you went to India before you did the talk, I just keep just really relishing in your expansion of your soul. And so it's just making me think of like your little itty bitty first shoes and then your little outfits, and you keep growing, and so they don't fit you anymore. And so for me, someone who likes to surf in her soul, it's just such an honor and a blessing to watch and feel and be a part of the expansion of your beautiful, beautiful light.
Well, very grateful to you. You go without saying, but yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
I just look forward to seeing the 4 stones when I come visit.
Yeah, they're
And
there.
I liked that component of your personality, which I feel like could be an opportunity for like judgment, being like, oh no, I've lost my sacred stone, like I'm kicked off the trip or something. But um, you were able to keep going with that, and then you kind of have it. And I think that's a good memento. And I feel like I've found stones to be like a memento that I've wanted to like hold on to from different trips. So I just thought that was neat.
Yeah, me too. I've felt that in the past with stones. And interestingly, as a reflection of that same theme, with the casualness in a way, on our very first day, we kind of like, I mean, it was so disorienting because I'd never been there before. You're on a rickshaw, like, and I was actually like, I was so scared to do the Dandavats. I was so scared for it to start. I was getting such like first day of school vibes. And honestly, you know what I was most scared of? Was I gonna wear the wrong thing? Like, should I have been in the dhoti? Should I have been in the this or that? Like, I was so worried that like I was gonna wear the wrong thing. Because there are like sometimes, and it's a lot more strict for women, for example, there's like certain like, regulations and rules that they're supposed to follow when you do rituals like this. And so one of the common things for women when they do Dandavat parikrama is that they're actually meant to lay on their side as they go down, and to not put their back to Giriraj, to not put their back to the mountain. And so it's kind of a more difficult Dandavat. So a lot of our girls were just like, we'll just do it on the front. But people will actually stop you on the path. Guys will come over and say, hey, no, 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 ladies do on the side. So all this to say, why did I start talking about that? You can get into the rule mind with it. Oh, I was nervous about what I was going to wear. I was nervous about maybe even like rendering some offense, and yeah, I just had to go through that. But the first morning you get kind of like rushed in. Have you been to Govardhan, Donna Kaylee? So we started at Manasi Ganga, and arriving there in the sunrise hour for the first time ever, I was just like, where am I? Like, well, this is like, it was so weird. It was in a good way. It was like, wow, something big is about to happen. And we sort of kind of gathered there quickly. There's a lot of noise happening around. Some Brahmins came over and started smudging some, red paste on our face and saying prayers over us and asking for some rupees. And we were singing the prayers for the first time. We were standing there singing. We'd sing Samsara Dava. We sing Govardhan Astakam and Vrindavan Astakam. And I was like crying, I was singing these prayers. And then it was like, okay, and now we're gonna start. And Jai kind of just like walked over. He's like, everyone ready? And I was like, oh my God, I don't have a rock. Like they didn't like take us through the rock getting process. And so instead of it being, there's no rock getting process, it's like grab a rock. And so I just looked down into like the gutter and like wedged between two pieces of sandstone was this rock. And I had this moment of like, oh, if I pull this out, is it supporting those two pieces or can I? Anyways, all that to say, it's like, yeah, you take the rock that's right there. And now it worked out because now I got this little mini Govardhan on on the altar. Cool, you guys. Look, I really, really appreciate you. I appreciate you staying the whole time. I appreciate your reflections, what you shared. If you know anybody who would like to hear something like this, the recording is going to be available. And yeah, I look forward to more association with you all in the future, and deep dandavats to each and every one of you. So thank you all. Hari Bol.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk to you later.
Thank you, Patrick.
Bye.
Cool.
See you tomorrow, Don Kaylee.